Good afternoon, everybody. I am Steve Nason, Research Director at Parks Associates. I oversee our entertainment research practice, and I am so pleased today to be joined by Matt Smith, VP of Business Development at Symphony Media AI. How are we doing today, Matt?
Doing great. Thanks for having me today. I'm glad to be here.
Absolutely. Before we dive into our proper conversation, maybe you can just let everyone know about Symphony Media AI and also your role there.
Sure. So we're a 30-year-old company with a history of working with media entertainment data. We work on behalf of the content provider to measure how and when and where their content is played and ensure the proper compensation. And we're also providing a variety of new SaaS tools that measure and predict revenue, audience behaviors, insights, and even churn mitigation. Personally, I look after Reviti Engage, which is our audience and content insight solution. I help content providers to see how the audience is interacting with content and analyze when subscribers may be at risk for churning and help to prescriptively address that.
Yeah, that's really interesting. All the metrics that you mentioned, retention, content engagement, obviously churn is a big term in the industry. So we're going to dive into some of that now. But I want to just take a step back as we kind of start our conversation. Let's look back maybe 3 to 5 years. And from your perspective, how has the market, the media and entertainment, connected entertainment space kind of changed over that time? What trends have you been following? What have you kind of noticed, both from an industry and consumer standpoint?
Yeah, being an old school video guy, I've been working in the coal mine for a long time. So most striking to me is the impact of AI and ML. So this is exciting because it's transforming how we define insight in terms of the depth, the scale, the quality, and also really exploring the unknown. You think about it, one thing ML or machine learning can do that humans can't is answering questions that humans don't think to ask. So, for example, we're working with a big media brand, and we engaged with them, looked at their data, and the algorithm detected 15,000 subscribers who had no expiration date, and that tabulated into about $1 million in revenue. So that was something that we didn't ask the algorithm to look for. It found it on its own, and that's pretty striking. You know, AI is the thinking and the learning of computer platforms or machines, incorporating human intelligence into the machines and computers. To be more specific, it's the computer platforms and the machines that are taking in data and learning from that data, making decisions from that data to achieve a goal and complete a task. So for media entertainment companies, this really means providing invaluable analysis of their platform data with insight into every aspect of their business, from the authorization to the payment gateway, content affinity to user preference and outcome probability based on a variety of factors. So in layman's terms, though, that sounds a bit high-minded, but we're really using the machines and the trained algorithms to really analyze every aspect of a video offering. That's what's really neat to me.
Yeah, really interesting. And maybe you can kind of talk about the role of technology and data and how it's kind of evolved from where it came to where it was. You kind of mentioned some of the use cases, but and you mentioned, you know, in general terms, kind of what AI and ML brings to the table. But maybe you can kind of dig a little deeper into that and really what does this next generation of, let's call it smart data, what does it really bring for your clients and others in the space?
Yeah, to go a little deeper on ML, it's a component of AI. Machine learning provides the computer systems with the structure to learn, the algorithms, if you will. So the algorithms are used to gather the data, analyze it. The machine learning needs the assistance from humans, programmers and data scientists. So, you know, like recommendations of content based on prior viewing habits. But, you know, the really interesting thing about what AI and ML are doing today are driving things that required a lot of human interaction just not that long ago, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And you kind of touched on the different use cases that you're helping your clients, you know, using these techniques, right? As far as customer retention, you know, payment, subscribership, content engagement, all that. Since COVID-19, which has obviously been such a unique point in time, an unprecedented time, obviously. Have you noticed that your clients' needs have changed? Have they kind of shifted towards one use case over another? Are they focusing in one area that you're helping them with?
Well, it really varies by the provider themselves, right? And the business model, right? There's a lot of different models. There's AVOD, there's SVOD. We have one example I'll give you is I recently engaged with a customer who had a very long trial period, 14 days. And some of these viewers, especially, coming out of the pandemic, may have a lot more time on their hands. And frankly, they were seeing a trend where a big swath of users were going in and binging every episode of one show and then just jumping off the platform. So, a small little nugget of advice I could offer here to the audience. So if you are a programmer and you're using a trial method to obtain those subscribers, think carefully about where and how you place the content, how you're going to monetize it or charge for it, what the payment gateway looks like relative to how long a subscriber has to consume that content. You want them to engage with your platform for a piece of content or different pieces of content, but give them a reason to stick around too.
Right, absolutely. Well said. So to kind of conclude our conversation today, let's kind of spin it forward. Let's look over the next year or two, and where do you kind of see the use of data, especially as I'm calling it smart data, kind of evolve from here, and especially as you use it to help clients in this space?
Yeah, consumer choices have really shaped how we create, deliver, manage, and measure content of all types. If you think about the fragmented distribution landscape, it now requires really unexpected functions. Legal and accounting teams now, believe it or not, have to have complex tools to manage their workflows and their businesses. And then even further, the complex monetization landscape now requires more complex and intelligent tool sets to establish and manage a variety of models. We talked about it a second ago, from AVOD to SVOD, from trials to converted subscribers. So the changes in windowing meaning where instead of it being, there's a date between theater and when it's available in your living room, that's compressed a bit. And bundling is really further stretching out the teams and the tools and really the business itself too. So I still wonder, as I look forward too, I wonder if short form content has a distinctive future. So if any of us have watched teenagers, TikTok is the main go-to for them. But conversely, the crash and burn of Quibi gives me pause. So I don't know if a change in content form is one forward path for sure, but we believe that the future of media entertainment viewing will continue to test the provider's ability to think about these things and anticipate and adapt to changing viewer tastes. So we're helping by continuing to build and adapt technology to help them meet these needs. So really, if you're in the audience, ask yourself how prepared you and your team are for that.
Absolutely, and that's a great way to wrap it up. Well, Matt Smith, VP Business Development at Symphony Media AI, thank you again for your time and perspectives today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
If you miss a live session, you can go back at any time to watch on demand. Go to Watch Replays and click on the session that you want to view. Have you created your own event agenda and swap card? Visit the Agenda and Watch Replay tabs to add sessions that interest you to your own event. You can go back to My Event to revisit any bookmarked sessions, sponsors, and items. We want to make sure that you're connecting with our industry-leading sponsors. You can interact with them by visiting the Booths and the Sponsor tab. You can also bookmark sponsors or add items to your event to view later. Sponsors have uploaded extra materials for attendees. Make sure to visit sponsors that interest you to chat with one of their team members or save documents for later. We have dedicated meeting slots set up for break times between sessions. Continue the discussion by requesting meetings from others in the Swap Card platform. Schedule a meeting with another attendee or a sponsor by visiting their page. The panelists and speakers will be addressing your questions live during the stream. During the stream, use the question tab to ask your questions early in the presentation. Go to the poll tab to answer polls that will be discussed during the live stream. If you need help navigating Swap Card, please reach out to our team by mentioning @Parks Associates in the chat box or by contacting one of our team members via our company page. Welcome to the 4th annual Future of Video OTT, Pay TV, and Digital Media, a virtual series taking place across 2021. Consumers and their entertainment choices are the key drivers in the entertainment industry. As more video entertainment options become available, bringing more freedom of choice, consumer preferences will determine their usage patterns and the size and content of their portfolios. Market conditions have also changed the nature of competition in video services. Consumers are willing to carry multiple video accounts to get the content they want, so in many instances, a service is desired based on how it complements other services in the market. Thank you for attending Future of Video, OTT, Pay TV, and Digital Media.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the opening session of 2 days of content in Parks Associates Future of Video 2021 series. I'm Jennifer Kent, Vice President of Research at Parks Associates, and I'm very excited to dive into our first topic, all about the shift in video services to hybrid business models. We'd like to take a moment to first thank our sponsors that made today's session and the Future of Video series possible, our research partners Everrise and Symphony Media AI, our session sponsors Comcast Technology Solutions and Delta Tray, our gold sponsors Brightcove and Future Today, our silver sponsor Bitmovin, and thank you to Metrological for sponsoring our break. And thank you all for your support of Future Video. We want to thank our Media and Industry Association supporters who make today possible as well. Our Platinum supporters, CEDIA, Connected Design, DealerScope, SCTE, the Monitoring Association, and the Z-Wave Alliance. Thank you to our supporters, the Asia Video Industry Association, the Home Grid Forum, and the Media Institute. Thank you all again for supporting Future Video. Our 4 sessions today and tomorrow are the last of our 2021 Future Video Virtual Series. Over these 2 days, we will be tackling some of the hottest topics in video streaming, from business models and consumer engagement to aggregation, bundling, and partnerships. As an attendee, you have access to all of the sessions we've conducted this year. So we hope that you take some time to explore the Swap Card platform and catch some sessions that you may have missed. Now, over the next 2 hours today, we're focusing in on trends in business models, particularly the move toward hybrid business models. I'll set the stage with some of Parks Associates research, then Parks Associates President Elizabeth Parks will lead an executive Q&A session with Kim Hurwitz, the CMO of Fight TV. We will then launch into our full panel discussion with leaders across the industry to hear how their organizations are expanding or supporting new revenue models in OTT. We have industry leaders from MPP Global, Redbox, Applicaster, and MediaKind. After that panel, during our break between sessions, we open a networking room to take our conversation out into the virtual hallway, if you will, we'll post a link to the Zoom room in our chat. So you're welcome to join us to continue the conversation and engage with our speakers. As a reminder, we also welcome your questions throughout. So please submit any questions for our speakers throughout this session into the questions or chat tab, and our team will see them in there. We're also eager to hear your topics, your thoughts on the topics. So we have some polling questions as well. So please submit your thoughts on the polling questions, and we'll discuss the results later in the session. So let's get started. Many OTT video service providers continue to go to market with a singular business model, either subscription, ad-based, transactional, right? However, as competition has intensified and the battle for online video viewership and its associated revenue grow, many providers are looking to hybrid business models by blending various approaches together to gain market share and increase their user and revenue base. Now we're going to take a look at consumers' use of OTT services by business model and the ramp up of ad-supported and transactional services. We'll look at how consumers navigate the choices in front of them, and also take a look at new revenue models kind of beyond the service models themselves that promise to generate additional revenue. And of course, the ultimate goal is capturing that revenue and creating sustainable and profitable businesses. So let me start by saying that the online video streaming market is an incredibly crowded market, with hundreds of distinct services available in the US alone, and of course expanding internationally. Over the past 3 years, there's really been a massive increase in streaming video service adoption, with all service types benefiting, really regardless of business type. The streaming giants and what we refer to as sort of the foundational OTT services all use a subscription video on demand business model, and it does remain the leading type of service that consumers use today. Of course, the subscription category now also includes a variety of vMVPD or online pay TV services that offer a live linear content for a subscription fee as well, sort of modeled off of that traditional pay TV model. That said, both ad-supported and transactional services have seen major increases in adoption since 2018. 44% of US broadband households report using an ad-supported streaming service in the past 30 days, up from just 28% in 2018. And about 1 in 5 broadband households report using a transactional streaming service in the past 30 days, more than double the rate from 2018. Now, despite that uptick in usage of ad-based and transactional services, they do still lag pretty far behind subscription OTT and pay TV services as the first service type consumers look to when seeking content. Ad-based services function a little bit more today as supplemental content offerings for most viewers who access their paid subscription services first. Just 7% of households say that they visit an ad-based service first. Now, this is partially explained by lower, overall adoption of ad-based services. We think that this percentage could increase as ad-based services expand their interfaces to more closely resemble a content hub. Services directly integrated with smart devices like the Roku channel and Samsung TV Plus are really primed to become primary services in the future. Now, interestingly, when we look at just those households that do use all 4 types of services, subscription services still hold the lead as the first content source consumers go to find something to watch, but the gap between ad-based and transactional service closes. So let's dive a little bit deeper into advertising and transactional service use. Parks Associates data from Q1 2021 shows that nearly 1/3 of broadband households, or about 33 million households, watch ad-based OTT video services, up pretty markedly from the prior year. Ad-based services, again, aim to become foundational within the market, through fluid ad integration and appealing content libraries. Certainly, as As advertising dollars have transitioned from traditional pay TV to online video, ad-based service providers see an opportunity to capture revenue from content owners that are seeking distribution deals as traditional pay TV declines. This market is still very much up for grabs, as a leader in the ad-based OTT service has not yet emerged. Unlike in the subscription OTT market, which is led by Netflix and Amazon Prime Video and Disney Plus, a hierarchy for ad-based services has not really yet developed. Viacom CBS's ad-based service Pluto TV has a slight lead, but is closely followed by Tubi TV, the Roku channel, and Peacock's free tier. Pluto TV, Tubi TV, and the Roku channel continue to hover around that double-digit adoption rate, while a flood of new challengers such as Peacock and Amazon's IMDb TV gain in uptake. Now, recently, many providers in the ad-based OTT space, such as the Roku channel, Crackle, and Tubi, have really begun to invest more heavily in new original and exclusive content. They're really trying to differentiate themselves by offering value-added content not normally associated with these types of services. And as this trend continues, a leader in the ad-based OTT space may emerge who can separate from the pack with unique programming. And in fact, we tested the drivers for consumers' use of ad-based content and found that consumer motivations can generally be bucketed into roughly 6 main drivers. And so, the majority of ad-based viewers confirm that a free offering is a compelling offering, and pick that as a main driver, right? But 65% of ad-based viewers say they watch ad-based services to access specific content of interest. So clearly, ads are not a barrier if viewers are interested in accessing specific programs. And in fact, we found that light users of ad-based services are attracted by the price point, while heavy users of ad-based content use these services because they find it particularly easy to find the content that they want to watch. Also notable here, 46% say that their ad-based services, again, are easy to use. About 1/3 use this service in sort of a passive lean-back way, just to kind of kill time. And 1 in 4 say the service feels familiar, like traditional pay TV service. That said, ad-based users are open to paying a monthly subscription for their most watched ad-based service if they were to receive the content without advertising. So there's a strong, potential for free ad-based services to upgrade subscribers to a paid tier without ads. 79% of ad-based users said that they would pay $1, about $2 a month for an ad-free subscription for the service that they use most often, for their ad-free service that they use most often. 60% say they would pay $5.99 a month, the current market price for basic tiers of services like Hulu and Paramount Plus. Hybrid pricing plans that incorporate paid advertising tiers have become an increasingly popular model for leading streamers. Hybrid services like Paramount Plus and Peacock all launched recently, and HBO Max added a paid ad-supported plan in June of 2021. Now let's take a look at transactional service use. Transactional service use may be less frequent than other service types, right? Consumers aren't coming to the transactional model quite as commonly, but renting or buying video is a widespread activity. We estimate about 53 million US broadband households use TVOD services. And transactional service use really has skyrocketed within the past year due to shifts in traditional content windowing. Some films intended for theatrical release have debuted exclusively or simultaneously on transactional services. And one thing that stands out about those who use TVOD services is that they are far more likely to use ad-based services as well. So over half of transactional OTT service users also use free ad-based OTT, which indicates that Viewers who are adverse to monthly subscription fees may buy or rent individual titles while accessing ad-based services, on-demand libraries, and live linear channels. And you can see this with services like Vudu, for instance, that includes an ad-supported, free titles in addition to their titles available for rent or purchase. And viewers that access Amazon Prime Video's transactional function may gain exposure to their free ad-supported service, IMDb TV, which is featured pretty prominently within the interface. Now, unlike the ad-based market, the transactional market does have some established leaders. Amazon, Google, and Apple remain the leaders for online video viewers to purchase and rent single movie titles and TV episodes. Now, that being said, the market share actually of these services may increase further since Sony announced that the PlayStation Store will no longer be offering transactional service for movies and TV as of August 2021. But the category as a whole, as I mentioned, has benefited from the distribution of new theatrical releases brought on by the COVID-19 crisis. And during this time, movie theater operators such as AMC and Alamo Drafthouse Cinemas have launched their own transactional services in an attempt to recoup those box office dollars that were lost when COVID-19 forced the shuttering of theaters. So it's clear that consumers are now commonly exposed to a variety of ways of consuming content and paying for or receiving that content. We're also seeing more and more services attempt hybrid approaches, combining subscription tiers with free ad-supported tiers, or offering certain content perhaps in certain windows for rent or for purchase. And two examples I think are instructive. So in August of 2020, the creators and producers of the American Black Film Festival, ABFF, launched a hybrid transactional and ad-based OTT service called ABFF Play. The ad-supported portion of the offering includes coverage of ABFF events, short films, original series, podcasts, and other branded content. The transactional arm was integrated to drive on-demand rentals of independent films and live stream events that included things like, stand-up comedy events, stage productions, and concerts. And so this hybrid approach really allows them to, utilize the transactional arm to highlight premiere film titles and exclusive events, while the ad portion showcases, some original and branded content. And that combined business model gives ABFF the flexibility to vary their monetization models based on the type of content that they have to offer. Now, in November of 2020, the UK-based Royal National Theatre also launched a hybrid transactional service. Now it's transactional and subscription-based OTT service in the US that focuses on live theatrical productions, and that service is called National Theatre at Home. And while the subscription portion of the service covers the bulk of the content offering, select exclusive titles are available to rent as part of a transactional arm. So the service includes a subscription tier that provides unlimited access to all available plays, and a transactional component where a single play can be rented for 3 days. And as with ABFF, the Royal National Theatre is looking to separately monetize some of its top shelf original content by making it available as part of that transactional model. And again, the hybrid approach not only gives the service provider the opportunity to build up its core subscriber base of theater enthusiasts, but also add on incremental revenues and incremental users with a selection of exclusive titles, available for rent. So I think these examples clearly demonstrate, a potential appealing aspect of integrating a transactional arm into a service offering. OTT services that offer event-based programming, really lend itself to this co-viewing experience with others in and outside of the core household that uses transactional components, on an ongoing basis. Now, interesting, actually, Park Associates data finds that transactional OTT customers tell us that they do use these services in a co-viewing type experience where they can watch content with others, and that's a leading driver of their user experience. And again, that kind of matches the event and production type content. Now, maximizing revenue by leveraging multiple service models is not the only way services are diversifying their revenue streams. In November, Fubo TV extended its strength in sports with the launch of Fubo Sportsbook, which is initially available in Iowa. And so bettors can now place bets on professional and college sporting events via the Fubo Sportsbook mobile app, which is not just an add-on to Fubo TV, but also integrated into its live TV streaming experience. Netflix Gaming, the much anticipated gaming line from Netflix, debuted in November. Just like its film and TV subscription models, Netflix Gaming provides subscribers with unlimited access to available games. And while Netflix is not yet monetizing the service, it gives the streaming giant a foot in the door of the game subscription and cloud gaming wars alongside Google and Apple and Amazon, and also a step towards a future media strategy that includes more immersive entertainment options. Netflix also entered a partnership with Walmart that makes the retailer the exclusive shopping hub for all Netflix-themed merchandise. And that hub is the streaming service's first digital footprint with a national retailer. So seeing a move into a merchandising revenue model. Also, T-commerce, according to its studio's chief operating officer, Amazon is trialing T-commerce models to enable viewers to shop directly through the connected TV platform. And finally, we see some services are integrating more deeply with social media and influencer platforms to take viewer engagement to the next level, as looks to be the case with Triller's acquisition of Amplify.ai, Fight TV, and Thuzio. So throughout our session today, we will engage with our industry speakers on the industry and consumer trends driving a move to hybrid models, the advantages and disadvantages of combining two or more business models to fuel growth, the logistical issues hybrid models introduce from an operational standpoint, effective strategies to convert free viewers to subscribers, and also, we're seeking insight into what emerging revenue streams are poised to gain traction in 2022. And with that, I'd like to invite Parks Associates President Elizabeth Parks to give us just a minute, and she'll be back with our executive spotlight chat with Fight TV.
And we're honored to have with us today Vikrant Mathur, the co-founder of Future Today. And Vikrant, thank you for joining us today. And could you please tell us a little bit about yourself and your role at the company as co-founder?
Absolutely. Thank you, Paul, for having me. Future Today is a leading independent ad-supported platform for connected television content. We have two lines of businesses. We have our owned and operated channels that we operate across a multitude of different platforms. And we also have a technology platform business where we work with a number of third parties and help them distribute their content, build an audience for their content, as well as monetize it in an ad-supported environment across various OTT platforms and services.
Thank you. And I think I'd like to launch right into a few questions that I had. And the first, and perhaps the biggest and broadest, is that we're living in an era where we're probably in one of the most connected, tech-aware times in history. And it's probably even become more connected over the course of the pandemic, and how everybody has really embraced technology. And from your perspective, what are the most influential industry and consumer trends that have shaped the last several years in the video and connected entertainment industry?
Sure. So, we got into the connected TV space, or the industry rather, in 2010, 2011, when we launched on platforms like Roku, Boxy. Yahoo had a product called Yahoo Connected Television. And so we've helped evangelize this space. We've seen it grow and evolve over the last about 10, 12 years almost now. And I can say the biggest shift that has influenced the media industry and the landscape in general is this migration of users, or consumers rather, from traditional television onto streaming platforms, right? I think consumers have been frustrated over the years, many years, with the cost that they have to bear or incur to watch content, as well as the lack of choice that they have when it comes to content. And so streaming has really democratized this space where, irrespective of what my interests are, and how I want to watch this content, there are so many different apps and services where chances are that I will find the content that I'm looking for. And I can enjoy it either in a subscription environment, or perhaps a free ad-supported environment, which is where we play.
Yeah, and I think that's a tremendous aspect to highlight, or trend that's really been influential, is just that democratization of access to content. And even if you don't have money, right, the level of access you have on an ad-supported basis. If you think just a few years ago, the prospect of getting access to any kind of premium content, you had to think about a pay TV subscription, and that's not necessarily the case today. So my next question that I had for you is that, building on that there's many companies in the streaming video arena today, and competitive advantage is always being sought, and differentiation has always been sought, and there's a number of different challenges, actually quite a few challenges faced by all the companies in the space today. And in your opinion, how has the role of technology evolved to better meet all of these challenges being faced by companies in this space?
Yeah, I know. I think technology has really been at the centerpiece of this revolution. If you think about, the cable pipe or the satellite dish that you're accessing content through traditionally, versus, an IP-enabled backbone through which you can not only have, one-way communication, but really collect a lot of data and use that to really improve the consumer experience. I think technology has really been pivotal in terms of just the role that it has played. Not to say that we're there in terms of where we need to be. I think we have a long way to go. But I can speak, from our standpoint, we play in the kind of free ad-supported environment, and for us, technology really impacts two, if not more, aspects of our operations, right? The first being from a consumer experience perspective. How do we give consumers the experience where, on a 55-inch TV where you have a really clunky remote control and very limited real estate, how do we give users the experience of discoverability of content that they have come to expect from a desktop or a mobile device where everything is at the tip of your fingers? And so, talking about data collection and using that data to influence recommendations, to personalize the content, and making sure that if you're sitting on a library of tens of thousands of videos like we are, you surface the right content to the right user so that they can find the content that they want to watch, really engage with it, and come back to get more. So that's one aspect of it. And I think just kind of an extension of that concept is the relevancy of advertising, right? Where when I watch TV, traditional television, I feel like a lot of the ads are not really relevant to me. And when I watch streaming television, it seems like there's a lot more relevance to the ads that I watch, right? And that's because you can really hyper segment your audience. You can really hyper target your audience. You can collect a lot of data. You can measure it. You can feed it back into your systems and continue to refine the relevancy, at a very kind of granular, almost a household level, right? And so from both of those standpoints, I think at least, in the free ad-supported space that we play in, technology has had a big impact, and it will continue to do so.
Right. And I think, if you look at how the nature of the experience has evolved because of that, I think it it means quite a bit to improving the overall engagement, right? I mean, the former dynamic was people hated watching ads. Apologies to all the advertisers out there, but you were served whatever ads that a traditional network decided to slot in, right? But now, because of that addressability, because of that specificity, you are not necessarily as averse to the ads that come. That doesn't mean you're going to convert, but it does mean that they are more relevant to you than the ads of old, right? So your engagement that might have slipped away when you're served an ad, it's less likely to happen, or it's likely to be less extreme, that turning away from experience than the experience of old. So it's definitely changed that entire viewing dynamic, even for the free ad supported space. And the next question I'd like to ask you is, everything's been evolving very quickly in the video space, especially in this last year or two. And in this fast moving, fast evolving environment, even post pandemic, what do you think the next 3 to 5 years in the video and connected entertainment space are going to look like?
Yeah, I think, we're going to continue to see this revolution that we've been seeing in the industry over the last, 3 to 5 years. We're going to continue to see more and more content come into the systems, various services, platforms. We're going to see more and more users, again, migrate away from, traditional television packages onto streaming television. And we're going to continue to see more and more advertising dollars kind of follow the eyeballs, and bigger budgets being spent on CTV, and a lot more television money, coming into the CTV ecosystem. So just at a macro level, I think that's what's going to continue to happen. But overall, I think there's going to be a lot more consolidation. So you're going to see, content companies perhaps join forces. You will see, what you saw with Amazon, where, big tech companies, platforms, they will continue to invest in content and, continue to bolster their own content offerings. And so you will see studios get gobbled up by, in addition to consolidation within the industry, studios being gobbled up by the big operators, or OEMs, who control the interface and can now really build a content experience for the user and get the content in front of the eyeballs. And then, overall, again, vertical integration in terms of, technology, where platforms are going to be more sophisticated in terms of advertising that they run, in terms of data collection, in terms of measurement practices. So you will see consolidation happening there as well, where perhaps ad tech companies will get acquired either by, big publishers who have significant scale and are looking for a unified offering that they can go to the advertisers with, or perhaps, OEMs. We saw LG acquire Alfonso, which was in the TV measurement space and targeting space. And so I think, those kinds of acquisitions will continue to happen. And it's a lot of players in the space right now, but I think in 3 to 5 years, there's going to be significant consolidation.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting to watch all of the M&A activity happening, because, I agree, there's a lot of vertical integration taking place, where you've got platform owners or developers or holders, however you want to refer to them, picking up content, right? Creating their own unique content, and then also getting into advertising and measurement as well. Yeah. And then some companies, if they're fully vertically integrated, they also make the hardware, right? Yeah. And so you have newer entrants to the market that understand this dynamic, and as the smart TV becomes the central point of aggregation of consumption and also control in the home, so to speak, of the main home entertainment consumption experience, a lot of big players in the industry are understanding that it's important to own this point of control, right? This point of data collection, this point of aggregation. Yeah. And also a point where they understand all of the data that comes with it and what it means for advertising, right, and measurement. And that's a huge treasure trove to own long term, especially if you're talking about addressing an installed base that's built up over time. Yeah. So I think understanding that, where that power is shifting to now, and the big players really picking up the pieces they need to have more and more control over this point of aggregation. It's very interesting to watch. So
yeah,
I
no,
am very curious.
Yeah, I think, the companies that own the interface, eventually they're going to be the big winners in this ecosystem.
Yeah, so I know the advertising industry is watching very excitedly, I think is a very diplomatic way to put it. At the amount of advertising control that's now shifting towards the big CTV players. So I'm very intrigued by what's going to happen. So in any case, Vikram, thank you for joining us. It was a pleasure speaking with you, and honor to have you with us today. Very interesting conversation, and we're looking forward to having you again in the future.
Likewise. Thank you, Paul. Thanks for having me.
From Parks Associates Vice President of Research, Jennifer Kent, talking about the state of OTT services. I am so excited now to invite Kim Hurwitz, Chief Marketing Officer of FEAT, back to Parks Associates virtual stage. My name is Elizabeth Parks, and I'm the President of Parks Associates. And FEAT is a global sports and entertainment platform that broadcasts over 1,000 pay-per-view events a year, including the #1 event in 2020. FEAT was recently acquired by TrillerNet in April, bringing together a powerhouse group that bridges entertainment events together with social content, influencers, and powerful brands. As a reminder to our audience, we are taking questions. Just use the chat on the bottom right hand of your screen, and I will incorporate them as we go. Please submit your questions. We'd love to ask those directly to Kim as we're moving along. Kim, I'm looking forward to talking about new business models, what's driving engagement these days with consumers and entertainment, the role of partnerships and social media, as well as influencers and brands. So thank you so much for joining us today. Let's go ahead and get started and see if you can share more about your role and what FEAT has been working on this year. Excuse me, fight.
That's the first thing I was going to say. It's like, oh no, it's fight.
Yes.
Combat sports.
Exactly.
A variety of entertainment. I've been there about 2.5 years, and but I've been in the whole pay-per-view and combat sports and entertainment industry about 25 years. So started out in cable and then went over to DirecTV, where I was head of pay-per-view in the early aughts, and then did some streaming services, and then went back to DirecTV for my second tour of duty there. And then went over to Film On, which was a global streaming company. In fact, Vikrant, who's just on from Future Today, we carried some of his content early on there. And then I went on to Karate Combat. I'm karateka myself, so that was near and dear to my heart, and helped launch that brand, which exists today and doing quite well. And then came to FIGHT. And FIGHT is the premier global platform. We specialize in pay-per-view, but for anyone who's been to FIGHT or uses it regularly, they probably know that we have a lot of subscription channels. We also have free content. We're definitely the definition of hybrid business model.
Well, that's great. Well, tell us about this acquisition that's happened this year and how that is impacting FIGHT's move to really capture more consumers and, really round out the experience as it relates to live sports entertainment.
Yes, TrillerNet acquired us in April, I believe, of this year. And this really, it came about because we worked with them last year on the Tyson Jones Jr. pay-per-view event. That was a very groundbreaking entree into a pay-per-view event because it married a lot of seemingly disparate entities into the show. So it had arguably one of the best pay-per-view box office attractions of all time, Mike Tyson fighting Roy Jones Jr., who is also a very revered champion. And on the undercard, they put a young man named Jake Paul, who fought an NBA player, Nate Robinson. And then they had a series of other kind of more traditional boxers. But throughout the event, which, this was like prime COVID, if there is such a thing. Everyone was getting used to the lockdown and the new world and how we do live events without a live audience. And so they did it really kind of on a well, I don't want to say a soundstage. It was actually a huge arena, but it didn't have any people there other than commentators and the people filming the event. And we had commentators such as Snoop Dogg, who is a co-owner in Triller Fight Club. And it gave a very really a unique way of presenting an event. We also had a lot of music artists. And so it was marrying kind of a variety show into a major boxing exhibition. And it turned out to be the biggest pay-per-view event of last year from Triller, which was primarily known as a social media kind of music focus app. And they were kind of beating the boxing promoters at their own game. It's also, I believe, the 8th biggest pay-per-view of all time. And it was such a good marriage between what we brought to the table and what they brought to the table that we started doing other events from them. And so the acquisition was just a really good mixture of parts fitting well together.
Absolutely. And TrillerNet, I understand, has around 300 million subscribers worldwide, or app users worldwide. So tell me a little bit more about how these different partnerships unfolded, and was there really this snowball effect that ended up taking place with your video viewers?
We definitely saw an increase in viewers because 1 + 1 sometimes equals 3, and it was interesting because their demo was a little bit different than ours, but it seemed to be very compatible. Our prime demo is probably male 18 to 34. Great demo for advertisers and pay-per-view. But that shows that there's a lot of growth too, right? We can really kind of go younger and older than that, and there's a whole gender that we can get more involved into sports and entertainment, and so yeah, we found that there's a lot of crossover in affinity audiences, but brand new audiences. So we definitely saw our social ranks grow by being involved with the Triller group, and you can't discount the effects of kind of the COVID-19 situation that we find ourselves still in. Just like so many companies like Zoom and many others have found rapid adoption because people basically were forced to work from home and have their schooling from home and their socializing from home. So we definitely benefited from the boom in streaming. It probably accelerated our growth by a couple of years. It moved us farther into the space that we had planned. We just got there faster because we had decided to branch out and do more than just combat sports. That's a sweet spot for us for sure, and we will always be probably one of our prime areas. But we got into motorsports and music and world team tennis and basketball and soccer and all sorts of things, which we continue to do so today.
And with this expansion to different, segments, that naturally gives you this bigger reach. And there's going to be a continued transformation as the pandemic, I guess, is continuing on. There's still some restrictions in some different places. What are some of the lasting things that you think are going to stick around that were very notable in the past 12 or 18 months that we're forever changed as far as it relates to entertainment and live events?
Yeah, I mean, I think the genie is out of the bottle, and I think people really like streaming. They like binging programs. They are open to the idea of different packages and I think different business models. So and in some ways this has never changed. I mean, I've been in the business a long time, and when I look at, I saw the opening segment, very nice charts and details about the adoption and the fact that people go to their bundled subscription service first. Well, that's no different than, frankly, 20 years ago when people didn't have streaming. They had maybe their cable company or their direct TV. We found that people would, when they decided to sit down and watch something on television, they would always go to their sunk costs first, right? So if you subscribe to, say, HBO, that's where you went first. There was nothing there that like piqued your interest at the time. Then you would go to, well, okay, let's go to TNT or Discovery or one of my subscribed channels and see if there's something there. And then eventually you might get to pay-per-view. It's like, all right, I have to open my wallet and pay extra for this. But now I'm going to go that route. So it was very similar to the charts the recent charts that were shown today that says, well, they go here to the subscribed bundles, and then, then they'll maybe go to ad supported, and then they go to TVOD. We don't really do TVOD so much because if you literally go by what that means, transactional video on demand, with pay-per-view, that tends to be live. And we can talk about live if you want. That's something it's a big component of why people are willing to pay extra, because it's happening now. It's dynamic. It's not something that's in the can. And I think people do pay a little extra premium for that.
And are you all experimenting with different price points or different offerings that meet the consumer where they're at? We've talked a lot about choice, and of course, there's the big bundles consumers can pay for, but they also want to go in and maybe just spend $4.99 a month or $10.99 to have access to specific content. Are there any different models that you all are working on, or that you could share with us on that point?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we have subscription models, we have pay-per-view, we have free, but we've even offered multiple choices within the same product. So for example, we launched a new sport in November called Triad Combat, and it infused rules that incorporate both boxing and MMA. And then we also had a big band called Metallica. Maybe you've heard of them. and they did songs in between some of the fights. And then after the main event was over, they did a full concert. And we offered this at different price points. So you could buy it as a pay-per-view, as a one-off, or you could subscribe to our Trilliverse package for a subscription. So it's kind of up to the consumer. Do you want to subscribe? You'll get a better value, but it does kind of portend an ongoing relationship. And we're doing a lot with our Trilliverse and hybrid events where we do boxing and versus concerts together. So, but if some people opted to do pay-per-view, and that's fine. Just like we offer different ways that you can watch it. You can watch it on our Roku channel, or on our Samsung native app, or online, or on a mobile network. You can watch it on PlayStation. You mentioned, someone mentioned earlier today that PlayStation did away with offering movies and so forth, but they offer pay-per-view events from us, the bigger ones still. And the other thing about pricing is that we're a global company, and different economies can support different price points. And in over 5.5 years of existence, we've kind of learned more than any entity out there with 5,000 events that we've streamed, that these are price points that work, say, in the UK or Australia or Singapore or the DACH region or Latin America or the US. And so we price everything dynamically and according to what the market will bear.
Well, that's great. And I think I should give you congratulations, because I believe I read this morning that Metallica is going to be doing some further investment in your group to continue that partnership. So that was very exciting to read. Let's maybe stick on that live music and live entertainment. And can you share how expansive is this opportunity as we talk about, revenues and money, as you are able to bridge music together with these sort of extreme sports experiences, and both groups come with consumer segments that are very loyal and sticky and willing to pay for those experiences. So I want to know, how big is this market do you all see for this opportunity ahead?
It's a very big market, and I've been involved in the music industry for a long time, and I think that anyone who is a fan of music or has been in the business of it has seen a massive shift in revenues. So when I was, I guess, the early aughts, when you started seeing really Apple Music starting to sell songs, one by one instead of the old album model, and then streamers like Spotify coming along and streaming everything everywhere. I think that some of the opportunity for music has been maybe lost a bit on that end, but it's made it more democratic. There's more people creating music than ever before, and that's a big, important part of what Triller is trying to do. They're really trying to open it up so creators can have more of a voice and a platform, and it will be supported by all these other suites of companies in that group. Live performances of music are making more money than ever. So that's one of the reasons why we enjoy the Triad Combat concept that we just launched, because it involves live, the return to live as well. When we did the Metallica Triad Combat event in Dallas last month, we had, I think, there were 25,000 people there. So, we sold it, but we also streamed it live. And as far as Versus, that's an incredible company that Triller purchased last year, and it's run still by Timbaland and Swiss Beats. And so you've got some real legends there that are reaching out and inviting just the best hip hop and rap and soul artists of all types, and they do kind of these battles against, it's a friendly battle, obviously, but it's a celebration of music, and it's incredible the love that this audience has for this music, and it seems to go quite well with the nights of good boxing cards, and you can get this on the Trillerverse subscription as well. So.
Well, TrillerNet has certainly been, making lots of big moves in the last year and creating this, huge conglomerate to be able to have a new experience for consumers. I want to get back, though, to this pricing strategies and the bundle. You have so much experience, and I want to see if you can look back again at those cable days and tell me if you see more and more bundles coming. We're in many ways in the early stages with OTT services, although quite developed at this point, with the majority of consumers having them in our house. And we just released research this morning showing now that 49% of U.S. broadband households subscribe to 4 or more services. So this is just a huge growing area, and I really want to get your perspective on how much does this relate back to the cable days, 20 or 25 years ago?
Yeah, I mean, it's very similar. Where back then it was, you bought your cable package, and then there were different, remember there were like silver and gold and platinum levels, and I don't know why they always chose those, but everyone seemed to do so. And then there were premium or pay TV channels like Cinemax, HBO, Showtime, and Movie Channel, and Epix, and there were smaller niche ones too. But then little by little, I think that you realize that there's a little bit of a subscription fatigue. So there was a lot more bundling. And then when streaming kind of took off, it started to be these individual entities like the Netflix and the Amazon Prime. But then the TV guys got into it as well. So with Peacock and Paramount Plus and Disney Plus and ESPN and Hulu, which also is kind of owned by, I guess, NBC and other entities. I mean, everybody is doing their bundle. And I think there will be a little bit of a subscription fatigue there too. I think you're probably going to see, just like it happened in the cable days, you're going to see people joining together. And then the people who had been aggregators, typically like a Roku or an Amazon, and you're already starting to see it, and even Netflix. Netflix started out by just carrying other people's stuff, licensing other people, but they really took off when they did, the House of Games and some of the original programming. And then now, I think the goal for them now is to really go all in original programming. And then I read in the news that Roku is now going to be putting money into original programming. So when it comes to price sensitivity and how much the consumer will bear, I think it just comes down to the value proposition at the end of the day. Is it worth it? And I think you'll see probably more bundling. I mean, they're kind of doing it now with, I guess, Hulu, ESPN, and Disney. And I know that's tricky for them because ESPN has a lot of sports rights that wouldn't be applicable in certain areas. So it's not super clean. They're going to have to, work on it. But, we kind of are operate as like an ESPN for Triller in a way, where they're a distribution arm. And yet we also carry items on our own. We still operate as kind of an independent entity. We have, the ability to go out, like we're carrying the Jake Paul Tyron Woodley fight, which is a Showtime fight. We're carrying that just on our own, just as a fight. And we've done that with Top Rank and other entities out there. So,
well, that's great. I mean, more bundles coming, and perhaps some fatigue from consumers. That's something we look at and talk about. We do have a question from the audience I want to bring in, and it relates to the opportunity for incorporating sports betting as a revenue stream for Fight TV. So, is that something you all are looking at or considering already?
Well, yeah. I mean, I guess it's something that we've been looking at off and on for some time, and I guess it's really just a matter of. I think it's just a matter of time. It probably will happen. I don't have any kind of announcement on that. But I think every sports entity is probably going to be looking at a lot of the same things, which is some sort of betting, whether it's like real money or if it's fantasy betting. And it's a little trickier, I think, for global companies. I mean, it's tricky even for a domestic company because every state has their own law and prohibition on certain betting, or you can do this, you can do that, you can do parlay bets. But I think you have to get into anything that's new. I mean, that's hot right now. So are the NFTs. And we've been, getting into that area. We were at Art Basel as Triller with Basquiat
Maybe we can pause there. That NFTs. Can you explain that to our audience? That's something we are going to talk a little bit more about. So I'd love to hear if you could give our audience an overview of what are we talking about.
Well, I'm by no means an expert on that. So NFT, non-fungible token, is what it stands for, but it's basically a digital asset. And so it's something that you can buy and you can trade, not unlike a digital trading card, right? So when you grew up, maybe you traded baseball cards or NASCAR cards or football cards. It's that kind of thing. You buy it. And right now, that seems to be where a lot of the traction is people buy something that they think is really hot, and they're oftentimes using it to flip and just make money. It's an investment. And speaking of currencies and investments, I mean, I think a cryptocurrency is going to be something that people will use as a payment method as well. So yeah, I think it's moving fast.
Yeah, it's a new world, and we've seen noted some recent announcements from some of the sports teams. I do want to throw out a few stats here for our audience. 10% of broadband households engage in sports betting. 8% of broadband households in the U.S. engage in fantasy sports, and 33% of broadband households subscribe to a sports OTT service, according to our data. So gambling and sports betting certainly is an area that I think is really complicated. It's a ton of money there. And, when it touches back into the world of celebrities and influencers, there's all sorts of other incremental revenue streams that come as a result. And so is that something that Fight TV really is looking at with some of these partnerships? And is that a way for you to really dive deeper into those relationships so that you have some groundwork really laid for the future of content delivery that you all are doing?
Yeah, I mean, we work a lot with influencers. On the fight side, certainly we work with fighters, and we have a fight affiliate program. It's powered by CJ, which is probably the leader in the affiliate business. And we love it because it's a way, it's kind of like a structured word of mouth with a very powerful mouth that has a lot of engaged followers that can help promote. The celebrities and people that have tons of followers really are brands, and they are it's the new Procter and Gamble. Could be The Rock, or someone who just has an incredible reach, and they can make big strides in helping to grow a sport or a show, or just like movies. I mean, you would get the movie stars to go out there and go on media junkets to promote it. It's really no different with social media. It's just another way of trying to get eyeballs to look at something, and hopefully they'll consume it.
Well, and certainly everybody is in the business here to make money, but those influencers, celebrities, and participants in your fights that go on, they have a real investment on their own. And so can you share maybe some of the things that they say back about the ways you're partnering? This has got to be all new for them, and they end up getting thrust into the spotlight and really being able to push products and messaging. How is this arrangement different from the world of the past?
Well, I don't think it's terribly different. As I was saying, movie stars would usually be required to go and stump for the movie, right? And to promote it. And I would say that I can't speak for all sporting organizations, but I have to think the ones that are successful, that are focused on bringing value and earning revenues, are going to make sure that anyone who is fighting on a card, they need to, it's often in the contracts. not only, for us, but any other entity, where you're going to have to do X amount of social media posts, and you're going to have to submit to, or agree to media interviews that we set up for you. Speaking of Jake Paul, whose fight's coming up, he's kind of the master at that. With 20 million YouTube followers, that's a massive base for him to talk to, and journalists are interested in him. And I think that the biggest stars tend to really grow brands. I mean, look what Conor McGregor did for the UFC. He was, when they ranked the top athletes in the world recently, I think he was really up there. He was as big as any other sports star who's makes a lot of money in the public eye. So I think that it hasn't really changed. Maybe the methodology has changed. Instead of being on a satellite media tour or a junket where people just ask you questions and then they send it all out to the network affiliates on TV, although we still do some of those too, because they can be a very good use of time. But a lot of times it's like, well, X amount of Instagram posts or TikTok or Twitter videos, or you have to do do a lot of interviews after the live press conference or something. It's very important, I think, to push brands.
Well, yeah, and they certainly have such an impact on the success of these live events. When we're looking at the future with the hybrid business models, you mentioned in our call the other day a lot of experimentation going on, and trying things out, seeing how they go, deciding whether to do that again or maybe not. And so clearly you're going to have some kind of path to data about your viewers and what they're doing to be able to make decisions. So can you maybe speak a little bit about that role of data and the technology behind it that is creating new, personalization opportunities, new ways to touch the consumer, and also that, operational aspects are so valuable?
Yeah, I mean, that's the great thing about a digital product, is the proliferation of data. So you can listen to it or not, but ignore it at your own peril, right? Because it really kind of tells you where things are going. And the owners and the co-owners, I should say, or founders of Fight are not just CEO and CTO in name. They built the company, right? So they're kind of data scientists and engineers by trade. So absolutely, we look at the data, and we do have internal prediction engines, a lot of AI powered stuff where it kind of gives us a finger in the wind of how things are going. And it's not always 100% accurate, because there's always different market conditions that can come up, or unusual variables that can throw it off a little bit. But we try to be very cognizant of going for the maximum ROAS when we do paid campaigns. We try to keep it a certain high level, and we're always looking at the prediction engine of different events, and you can kind of see, like, well, we're going to need to bolster this a bit. Are we doing really well in this region? What are we doing there that's different? How can we replicate that? We also try to get our consumers to tell us what they want, and we listen to them. I think if you listen to your consumer, you'll probably grow them. You can't always give everyone what they want, and they might say, well, we want everything to be much cheaper, but you have to price it accordingly to how much it costs, and be responsible. But we're big fans of data, so keep those studies coming.
Yeah, well, yep, so are we. And I love that comment, listen to the consumer and grow them. You could plug in customer there, whatever, if you're direct to the consumer, certainly, but any customer that you listen to, that opportunity really to enhance the experience, grow the value, and grow revenues there as well, in providing that value. Kim, you're such an amazing wealth of information. I really love talking to you. I want to get your perspective. We just have a few more minutes, but I want to ask you what you think about the multi-device world that we're in and how this relates to live events. So, consumers can pretty much watch anything whenever, wherever, however they want to. And so how is this changing that model that we've all been accustomed to? It's been in change, of course, but we're really coming at a point now where while the TV is certainly the heart of the home for the consumer and viewing entertainment experiences, those devices play a really important role as well.
Yeah, they do. And that's why we allow people to watch on any device when they order an event or if they have a subscription. So, and we track this, of course, so we kind of know when we start spotting new trends. One thing that we found out actually a couple years ago, we did a state of the industry report, and we found that people who have our mobile app are more likely to be better customers, even if that's not the main way that they watch. And that could be because, when you have a mobile app, you have push notifications and in-app purchases and other things that you can do to kind of remind them about something, or promote something. You like this, you might also like this. And of course, everyone always has one of these in their hands. I mean, people sleep next to their phone and like it's never not with them. So I think mobile is increasingly important to have a presence with your consumer, and that goes to social media and your approach of like, are you completely promotional or are you giving them content there? Because I think social media is like that's a channel. I mean, that's a TV network. That is something that people are watching. The hours per day that they spend just scrolling, that's a competitor to your business if you're delivering streaming content. So you need to consider that as well. But back to your multi-device. Yeah, we try to be ubiquitous. I think we are on over 7,000 different models of smart TV. If you have Wi-Fi, you can probably get us just about anywhere in the world because it'll be on some device. We're on all the OTT. We're even on the IPTV services of, say, like a Blue Shaw cable in Canada or Comcast or Cox in the US. We're on their IPTV services. If you're a broadband customer, you can get us directly there from a Fight app, and all the major televisions. And we love working with all of these devices because they, people tend to want to continue to buy if they have a credit card set up and an account in the same places, like over and over again. So we don't try to change consumer behavior. We try to follow it and make them happy about it and make it a better experience.
Yeah, that's great. And accessibility is certainly really important. Just, having a consumer be able to watch a live event anyhow, any way that they'd like to. I do have another question from the audience real quickly here. How are some of the new hybrid opportunities and revenue streams unique to the Fight genre? And what are the best ways for services to develop new hybrid models based on their unique genre? So are there any takeaways for any that you might share with any providers out there that maybe aren't within your specific area, but others that you could recommend?
But you mean in sports? I don't really, that was kind of seemed like two different questions. So what can you say that again, or just do one?
Yeah, I think the question is getting at if there's anything unique that you all are doing that could be applied to another area, maybe perhaps in sports or maybe in any other OTT service area that is not sports related.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't think that sports is very different from anything else. We do music and we do movies, and whether it's live comedy. I mean, we've done a bunch of things with Triller. Actually, just in the last couple of months, we carried Kanye, or Ye, as he's noted now, and it was a Sunday service. It was like a religious service, and in the past we've carried some of those free, and we tried also with pay-per-view, and we've tried different things. And it followed the same methodology as we would do for a pro wrestling event. It doesn't really matter what the content is. You just have to give it the value that it deserves. So we carried a marathon. It was for free from Spain, and we carried it last year as well. And again, it's really just promoting whatever the need is. I mean, sometimes you want to do something that might be free if you can get a big sponsor to underwrite it. That would work for almost anything. We've done live plays. We also work with other providers, and that's something I would suggest for someone, no matter what you're in. Sometimes there's strength in numbers, and it's good to have a partner. And so what I mean by that is we've done things in the past with Live by Live. They had a music event, and we said, well, we'll promote it. And we had them promote one of our MMA fights. It's like, so sometimes you share with people, and then you can kind of learn from their audiences, and not that you're sharing data so much, but just learnings of like, wow, that this did really well in that region. I think that you need to also experiment. If I've learned anything out of our time with Triller, is that what I love about them is that they're very bold. I mean, who puts music and boxing together? I mean, sometimes you just have to try something different, right? And watch your costs so you can afford to do lots of experiments. But maybe try working with a partner. Maybe it's two disparate groups that come together, but somehow they work. Don't be afraid to play in that sandbox.
Well, that's awesome, Kim. That's going to have to be our last word of the day. Kim Hurwitz, Chief Marketing Officer of Fight TV, telling us to listen to our customers, experiment, adapt, and change. And Kim, I love talking to you. Thank you so much for your time and joining us today, and look forward to having you back.
Thanks so much, Elizabeth. Appreciate it.
So just in a few minutes, we'll be right back, and look forward to continuing the conversation.
Okay, thanks, Elizabeth and Ken. What a fantastic conversation. I learned so much about what's happening, especially in the kind of fight-specific world and engaging consumers and really thinking about new models. Especially, I hadn't really thought about NFTs before and the opportunity here in the streaming video market. So that was really interesting. So pleased to be welcoming our industry speakers to flesh out this topic and our full panel discussion here about fueling the next stage of OTT growth with blended business models. I'm going to ask each of the panelists to introduce themselves, tell us a little bit about their organization and their role in their organization before we dive into our discussion. So very pleased to start with Jason Kwong, who is the Chief Strategy and Digital Officer with Redbox. Hi, Jason.
Hey, Jennifer. Thank you so much for having me. So yeah, I'm Jason Kwong, Chief Strategy and Digital Officer for Redbox. We are, most people probably already know, we're a next year 20-year-old business that started its roots in, kind of disrupting the DVD rental business. What people don't still know about us is just the tremendous scale that really affords us. We have 40 million customers that across the country that rent from us. We have 40,000 kiosks in key retail locations. We're in every Walmart, heavily penetrated across grocery, the Kroger's, Albertsons, down to drug, convenience, and even growing in the dollar channel. What we like to say, we're a bigger retailer than Starbucks and McDonald's combined in the US, but we do have just that massive scale. And with that, we have a ton of customers and loyalty. We have 39 million people in our loyalty program as well. And so building on that just kind of tremendous asset and this brand that really means movies and entertainment to our consumers and this large customer base, we've been building really a digital business and this multi-product digital business. So 4 years ago, we launched a transactional video service. We've grown that really well. Just, we tripled that in the second year. We did another 2.5 times growth in the following year, but that's really marketing against our customers. But what we do know about that Redbox customers, not only do they love new release, they're broader entertainment enthusiasts, but knowing that we very much have that Walmart customer, that's one of our largest channels, they're also very much value conscious, and they consume multiple types of entertainment. So we launched a fast channel service, which we launched last year. We've got 128 channels live today. We launched an AVOD service December of last year. We've got thousands of hours live on that service as well. And those services are growing nicely. And very recently, we took the company public in an effort to really capitalize on the great digital growth we've seen. And we've also announced that come Q2 next year, we will also be launching a SVOD channel service. So giving customers the ability to subscribe to third-party premium channels. So really leaning into this kind of multi-product or digital service.
Yeah, absolutely. Jason, Redbox really exemplifies this idea of having, diversified revenue streams and a blended model and kind of reaching consumers where they're at. So very excited to have you here today and to share your insights of kind of your thinking and how that's working.
Thanks for having me.
So next, very excited to introduce and welcome Jose Cruyff, who's the Senior Vice President of Americas for OTT and Broadcast with MPP Global. Hi, Jose.
Hi, Jennifer. Hello, everybody. Happy Tuesday and good afternoon. Buenas tardes, boa tarde from South Florida. Welcome. I am glad that you're joining us today to talk about the new business models fueling the next stage of OTT growth and the future of video. Like Jennifer mentioned, my name is Jose Luis Cruyff. I am with MPP Global, and we're MPP Global specialized in helping media, entertainment, and sports companies acquire, monetize, retain, and win back customers and subscribers. I'm looking forward to an interesting conversation out of which I hope you take away a few ideas on how you can help grow your business.
Absolutely. I'm sure we'll learn a lot from all of your work, supporting various types of, OTT service providers in the industry. Thanks, Jose, for being here. Okay, next we have Deborah Priwas, who's the Chief Product Officer with Applicaster. Hi, Deborah.
Hi, it's great to be here. I'll tell you a little bit about Applicaster. Our product is a SaaS app management platform. We have a no-code platform with built-in tools for a productized, highly configurable approach to building and updating streaming apps without sacrificing your custom design or tech stack. So media brands use our platform to create and manage OTT apps across 8 different mobile and TV devices with the freedom to create beautiful custom designs and make changes over time on their schedule. It's DIY to add platforms or make additional apps in a really operationally efficient, productized way without surprise costs, and to iterate and experiment on the UI. Even just listening today, this is a common theme and something that we're really passionate about and have built into our product. To experiment on how content is presented, different revenue models, different user experiences, all of which can be iterated and optimized to drive the ideal business results. And for companies that have developers and want to add their own custom code on top, we also support this low code option.
Great, thank you, Deborah. Very excited to have you joining our panel as well. And last but not least, we also have, I'm so pleased to welcome Eric Ramberg, who's the VP of Head of Global Business Development for MediaKind. Hi, Eric.
Hello, good morning. Well, thank you very much for having me here. I'm Eric Ramberg. I lead our global business development team at MediaKind. MediaKind is a media technology company. We've been around for a couple of decades serving both the operator communities for MVPDs as well as broadcasters globally. And then over the past 4 years, more and more of a streaming business for those entities, whether they're sports leagues or federations and all of that are going directly to consumer. So we really specialize in media workflows. We go everywhere from the contribution side, so from the cameras at venues, moving them through, handing them off to the production facilities, and then preparing them for distribution across the various different distribution channels. Of course, traditionally that would have been through your linear your broadcast or your cable infrastructure. More and more, as we know, and this is pertinent to today's conversation, it's going through internet distribution, different caching mechanisms to be able to provide both on-demand content, live content, time-shifted content, etc. And so it's both the AV infrastructure to be able to provide that at the lowest latency, at the highest quality, as well as then the management cores to be able to manage subscribers, and chiefly for this conversation about monetization and how do you determine the appropriate monetization for your subscriber base and for individual subscribers. And
sorry, could you say that again? I'm happy.
And then down to the actual monetization, personalization for the individual subscriber.
Eric, great to have you. Sounds like Alexa really wanted to, I shouldn't say that out loud, I'm going to trigger her again, but wants to support, right, like your work in monetization and supporting the clients that you work with. So, well, with that, I really want to dive in kind of in a big picture question. We're going to go to Jose first and then Eric. Talk us through from your point of view, right? You guys are kind of at different points of the ecosystem. What is driving the trend towards more blended or hybrid business models generally in the OTT space? And Jose, we'll start with you.
Okay, well, there's probably not one single right answer. It depends on where you're sitting in the industry, your market, your demographics, whether you're doing live events or sporting events or doing movies. But there are probably 4 or 5 topics or factors that we can probably all agree on. Number one is there are now more players in the industry competing for the attention and the revenue of customers, right? I think the easy days are over, and now OTT providers need to work a lot harder to acquire and retain their customers. Number two, and closely linked to that, is that subscriber-based growth rates are slowing down as markets like the North American market matures. Yet, and this is concerning, most companies seem to be focused more on growth and new subscriber acquisition than on churn. And I think that as markets mature, the battle for market share is critical for them to retain their subscribers. Number three, and I think we all talk about this, is the increasing cost of running the OTT business in a big way, driven by the cost of content. Advertising dollars are moving away from linear TV into digital. That's fueling the growth of AVOD, among other things. What else? The increasing cost of OTT services, right? Saving money was one of the big drivers or one of the big incentives for consumers to move away from cable, cutting the cord and moving into OTT. Now, as we stack more subscription-based services, and as the cost of those subscription-based services increase, that those cost savings are disappearing. And maybe finally, probably also the effort to attract new customers at the tail end of the innovation curve. Those late majorities and laggards that are yet to join the OTT party.
Those are a lot of different trends that you fleshed out there. That's really fantastic. I think your point about acquisition is really important and something that I don't know that we've really touched on in our setup of the panel today and with Fight TV. But being kind of everywhere your customers are, right? So whether that's through an ad-based model or transactional model, in a crowded marketplace, you're trying to get eyeballs, and so I think that's really important. Eric, how about you? What do you see driving the shift towards hybrid business models?
Yeah, well, I absolutely agree with everything Jose and yourself were just saying there. You have to meet your customer where they are, and as we from a positive sense, this market is maturing. It's becoming a material part, a significantly material part of each of the different distributors' business, and so this is a natural thing for it to happen. I see maybe roughly two sort of larger trends, and that is there are the global brands which are trying to understand, push outside of maybe their domestic and look internationally, sort of what's appropriate, back to what you said, meeting the consumer where they are, what's appropriate for their consumers around the world, how do they consume their brand, how do they move them forward into consuming more and becoming more deeply involved with that brand and the content. So there's one big thing that's going on. The other is for those entities of which just aren't at scale for various reasons. Sometimes it could be because it's a very fractured market where they happen to be geographically, like let's say over in Europe, where there's so many different broadcasters for each of the individual countries, and scaling outside of that country, can be challenging, and that country may be too small to be able to get to the same level of scale we enjoy here in North America. And so for them, it's about how do they reach outside? How do they develop that scale? How do they be able to be more complex in terms of how they address what their consumers need? And super important part of that is being able to have data, understand your audience, understand their price point sensitivities, experiment, try those things, and be able to continually, reassess and evolve as the consumer base moves forward.
Yeah, I think that we are certainly still in very much a time of experimentation, right? Not only are business models not set, but to Jose's point, we still have people coming into the OTT market that they may be laggards, but they're going to have different unique viewing patterns that are going to disrupt everybody's AI models that have been built on the early adopters, right? And trying to understand, what their preferences are is going to be really interesting. Just to follow up on the point that you were making about, international expansion and how not, one model doesn't necessarily fit every specific market. Can you share any, examples or ways that you're kind of supporting clients as they try and figure out what business models are appropriate for what market?
Yeah, so there's several components to that. Certainly what I just mentioned, being able to collect data, have it, easily accessible, have it being able to real-time accessible if needed, certainly to support transactional pay-per-view type things, but also just to be able to generate the insights over time. That's a big part of it. But of course, if you can't take action on anything, then you've just kind of lost the battle already. And so it's all about how can you easily manage the complexity of your subscriber, your audience base, I should say, and then be able to use that to segment them in a way that makes sense, and then be able to test with each of those segments, different models, different promotional aspects of it. How do you introduce them to new content? How do you move them deeper? How do you pull them into it? How do you work with them from a sports entity, let's say in the off season, and what do you provide for them there? So you have to be able to have something that's actionable and that you can easily manage and be able to deal with. So many of the first generation, I'll call it, types of platforms were really built to just get the job done of sending out content. And now, of course, as I mentioned, with the maturation of the market, you need to be able to manage those customers. You need to be able to provide them what they need at the price point that they're willing to deal with, even if that's fast, even if that's just advertising basis. Understand that, offer them, other options, and to move them sort of up the monetization chain.
Yep. Well, so one of the big models, of course, that we're seeing a lot of growth in is ad-supported business models, and that's one of the kind of main ways to create a hybrid. Obviously, we've seen Redbox do this. Jason, you mentioned that in your opening comments. I'd love to get your thoughts on the rise of advertising-based models generally, and also what it kind of takes to make that type of service, succeed. What are you learning there, and how that's unique from the retail and plays that you already had transactional?
Sure. Yeah, if you don't mind, I might even take a step back, because I think the previous question's super relevant to how we end up in FAST and AVOD. I think Jose made a comment about some of the drivers. One of them around being, obviously late adopters, and two, talking about retention, right? And really, we've got this tremendous opportunity as Redbox with the 40 million customers, right? With the 39 million people in the loyalty program, that at the end of the day, they're still renting DVDs. So they're very much late adopters. We know they even over-index for cable subscriptions, right? And so we found that even when we launched a transactional service, which is very much the same model as renting at the box, right? It's still very much new release in that home entertainment window. We saw we were able to keep more customers engaged, right? Folks that we were potentially losing and that had lapsed as physical customers, but still identify with the brand, became our digital customers. And we were able to re-engage them, and many of them started renting at the box again, right? And so we saw that very much complementary, and it helped to drive retention for those customers. And so when we started also asking our customers about what else are they looking for from us, right? I think Eric had made the comment also about meeting customers where they are. When we surveyed our customers about what they were looking for from us, given the fact that they're very much to the Walmart customer, we have that Dollar General customer at the $2 a night for a new release rental. We're one of the best deals in the business still today. And so our customers we want to see free content. And so this moving into FAST, moving in AVOD really was an effort for us to do two things. One, meet our customers where they are, provide them the services that they're looking for as they're transitioning to that digital world. But above and beyond that, create an ecosystem that allows for better retention, because we're serving a lot more of their content needs, right? TVOD and new release tend to be a weekend business. People get together with their family and watch, but things like FAST tend to be a weekday. It's just a different behavior. And so we're building complementary behaviors into a single service, giving our customers more opportunities to engage. And if they're very used to call it cable or a multi-product kind of ecosystem, it helps to simplify the experience for them. And that's our customer. That's who we're really targeting, try to create that better experience.
Yeah, thinking about the user experience in an advertising-based model, what can you talk to users' experience of advertising in these new streaming services, right, versus more the legacy, what they've used to if they are coming out of still kind of the traditional pay TV model of how they're going to experience ads, right? Is it a different experience? Is it largely similar? Can you learn more from the data that you have at your fingertips, right, about kind of what works and how to keep people engaged with the content, but also monetize that advertising asset?
Absolutely. I think the key for us and our focus is, obviously, I think our consumers are very much trained to accept ads, right? You see the growth of AVOD right now. I don't think that ads are really become the barrier for that content. It really becomes, do you have the right content experience, right? Do you have the right content? Are you able to drive that discovery of that content in a meaningful way where people are finding that? And then the ads part, for our perspective, is obviously you want to continue driving a better ad experience, drive better relevancy, drive a better technical experience as well. But I think from our focus is how do we make sure that ad experience is not detracting from the content, right? And is able to support, at least a seamless experience. And in our earliest stages of really building this business right now, we're finding it's really about getting our customers into the right content at the right time, right? If someone opens our app, whether they'd rather be watching linear and have that late lean back kind of channel flipping experience, or they want to be self-directed and go into AVOD and go find a movie or a TV show that they want to watch. How do we get them into that quickly and create a seamless experience there?
Yeah, I do think it's interesting that you've got, sort of this blend of like a live linear and an AVOD together, right? Because it really is, you're covering the gamut of ways that people want to, engage with content. Are you finding that one is a stronger complement to transactional, or they're just totally different use cases?
They're very different use cases. You see kind of variation in time of day. Certainly on the fast, we see a lot longer engagement, like say on midweek, right? The behavior is totally different because on the AVOD side, very self-directed. Someone's going to find what they watch. You're going to see them, the completion rates to be really high on that. Whereas obviously in the fast world, you see a lot more channel flipping. You might see longer kind of engagement, but it's a bigger determination of whether or not someone settles on the thing that they want to watch, right? And so what we've definitely seen is kind of that single thread or the single title. Fast channels tend to drive longer engagement. So how do we get customers into that more quickly? Because there's a lot more kind of predictability or reliability of the type of content they're going to see in there. But from our perspective, I think it really becomes about driving retention. I don't want to push consumers into one behavior or another, but really build complementary. So within Fast and AVOD, we're using our house ads to also remind people what new content's coming to the box, what's available on TVOD, going into that weekend, knowing that if going into Friday, Saturday, the behavior is getting together with the family and watching a new release movie, that we're staying front and center and driving, we become the top of the consideration set when it comes to that time.
Yeah. Well, Deborah, I'd love to turn to you and get your thoughts also on the sort of rise of advertising-based services and what you're seeing, from your point of view that's driving that, or maybe some compelling factors for making those types of models successful.
Sure. So all of the data, everything we've seen today has shown that advertising is growing quickly. People are accepting the value exchange, and then the basic principles of smart advertising haven't changed. I think that we're not necessarily seeing them adopted perfectly everywhere. So especially when it comes to, the TV is king right now. When it comes to smart TV viewing, the diversity of ad is not there. It's not on par with linear. And you very often will see the same ad played in the same commercial break or multiple times throughout the same program. And that's something that's really going to hurt this adoption, I think. And, the viewer is in the driver's seat and they have more choices than ever, and can easily bounce. But we're seeing this rise of advertising because the price is right. We're getting subscription fatigue. It's confusing. It's hard to find content you want to watch. I know even, going back to this summer and trying to watch the Olympics, we cut the cord earlier this year, and it was very tricky to try and find the right content at the right time. Sometimes if you are looking for something specific. But I think when it comes to making the most of advertising in a connected way for OTT viewing, again, I'm a platform. Media companies come to my platform in order to make their own Netflix-like streaming services, decide their business models, and it's up to us to productize this and have all of these elements available for them to use in the way that makes sense for their business. And we are seeing brands are adding more platforms than ever before this year. That was a #1 trend. We released some trends on our website earlier, maybe last month. We see an average of 4.3 platforms per media company right now because they are realizing that need to be ubiquitous and be everywhere their viewers are. And then when it comes to advertising, it's all about reach. It's all about that total audience and adding a new platform. For example, connected devices are really well established, but now that growth can be found in smart TV. And by adding a platform, you add a batch of instant audience all at one time. We're also seeing media brands, especially broadcasters with a diverse amount of content, launch multiple apps. So they might launch these multiple apps across the average of 4.3 platforms. They might skip mobile altogether. That's a trend we're seeing as well, and just go straight to TV for that lean back experience. But they are adding these apps on the platforms they understand, which not only give them greater penetration, but for an ad-supported model, you can also charge higher CPMs for these more niche, highly targeted audiences.
Let me follow up on something you're saying about launching multiple applications, right? So you're talking there about specific applications for the specific one application on different end devices, right? Or multiple applications per service, right? So maybe a free versus a premium. And one of the major issues with viewing in the OTT world is that fragmentation of the experience. And it's great that we have more choice than ever. It's also really hard to find exactly what I want to watch, where I want to watch it. And you're supporting all of these different applications and driving that, right? So are you seeing that there's as services attempt to be on all of these platforms, it's making that fragmentation worse? Or if you could talk a little bit about that.
It really comes down to discoverability for the user, and then also really smart marketing so that your audience knows that you're available and that you're there and that you can easily be found. It's getting really, really cluttered. Again, I'm a big fan of kind of pushing these smart TV platforms because they are less cluttered. If there is a gap, it tends to be on Samsung or LG, for example. But even, we're seeing these get more and more cluttered. But we're seeing a lot of what we're seeing, there's a few different strategies. One is the kind of super group, so like the super boy band, where we're seeing, especially in Europe, in order to take on Netflix and the big nine or the big five, whatever it is by territory, we're seeing a lot of adversaries. I won't say competitors anymore, because they're working together to aggregate content in order to create a larger audience and more content to monetize. One of our customers is ProSieben out of Germany, and they have an app called Zappin, which actually has content from multiple content providers. But again, using the ProSieben example, they also have a sports app, and they also have specific apps in different regions or different territories in Europe. But they're all powered by the same back-end tech stack, so they're getting that ROI from using our platform and creating a plugin. We have a pluggable infrastructure. So creating a plugin once and then scaling it across all of these platforms. We're seeing, even when it comes to a US network example, a broadcaster will very often launch a separate news app or a separate kids app in order to speak differently to a niche audience.
Yeah, certainly. Thanks for clarifying that. We do have a poll out to our audience right now. So to those who are watching right now, make sure you go over to the polling tab and get your answers in. But I will take the first one, was asking about what the primary drivers were for consumer use of ad-based services. And number one answer, definitely free access, right? Which you can't, again, get more compelling than free. And for certain consumers in particular, that they're looking for that value.
Jennifer.
Oh, please.
Yeah, the other thing is, and this goes back to a point that Jason made, AVOD is a great on-ramp to digital. We had an interesting conversation with a TV broadcasting company that was exploring going into a subscription-based service, and their concern is that was whether their customers, so their viewers, were going to take the pay for the content, because they've been used to watching TV for free, and they were not sure if the business was going to make money. So they decided to go with AVOD first to test the waters and get information from the customer base. And then even if you go to AVOD, you still have you can still make a decision. Will I ask my viewers to register so I can identify and collect information, or will I just do it with no registration required and then understand the market in a different way?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that play of having AVOD or advertising-based fast, right, be maybe an on-ramp to a subscription or a premium tier is really interesting. How difficult is it for services to make decisions as to what should be behind a paywall? What should be made available with advertising, or should they be largely parallel services? And the only difference is that you're getting to have an ad-free service. Jose, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, we do a lot of business, not only in media, but also in publishing. And you've seen some of the struggles of companies like Wall Street Journal and New York Times and all that. So doesn't necessarily have to be an either or. You can you can measure content, and depending on the behavior of the customer, you can trigger the paywall. There are people that would say, let's put the general low value, if you want to call it that way, content for people to consume, and hopefully we'll get them interested in going for the high value content. There are others that say, no, let's put together the high content, high value content that you can only get through our company free, and that hopefully will attract the higher value customers and make them subscribe to our service. So again, no silver bullet. Different businesses and different content and different demographics will require different things. But the idea is have the capability to test A and B, have the capability to put your content in front of the customer and measure data and response and likes and dislikes. And based on that, you can make the decision based on the data.
Yeah. Jose, based on all of the different services that you're working on, are you seeing certain combinations that are becoming more popular than others? For instance, subscription with advertising, or subscription with transactional, or advertising transactional, or something totally different?
No, it changes, and it depends also on the geography and the nature of the business. You got places in Southeast Asia where you have to do 7-day subscriptions. You get places in Latin America that you got to do cash based, that you got to send someone to collect the revenue or the fee from the house of your subscriber, right? So it depends on the market. Definitely, subscription based is still the premier, especially for the top players in the industry. And we're seeing AVOD coming up and stacking on top of that for the least, I think the secondary markets, you want to call it, with some subscription basis for very niche markets or niche content.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Jason, maybe back to you there. When you think about the different bundles that can be made, obviously you guys have your fingers in almost all of the different bundles. What's interesting is that you started transactional, right, where we see other services maybe trying to add transactional and monetize certain pieces of content in certain windows that they have. When you think about the industry generally, are you seeing certain kind of bundles make more sense for services out there?
Yeah, and I would, for us, I think about less about bundles, and it's really about giving customers choice, right? I think if we talk about consumption and AVOD really growing, at the end of the day, even for myself as a consumer of entertainment content, it's not really an or, right? It's an and, right? I tend to watch a new release on the weekends. If a new movie comes out with my family, there's series I watch that because I've subscribed to premium SVOD. There's certainly AVOD I watch as well, right? And I do tend to surf fast as a cord cutter. And so how do you give consumers more choice and more option within the same? I think Deborah really touched on this about, hey, one of the biggest challenges, especially for our late adopter customer, is that content discovery becomes a lot tougher, right? You're toggling between multiple apps, multiple sign-in. How can we simplify that experience by providing more of those services inside that single app or that single pane of glass to simplify that experience for the consumer around content discovery, right? And how do we provide more options along different kind of business models where they want to rent a new release, or don't want to pull out their wallet and want to watch catalog, or like older movie content, or flip linear, or subscribe to premium, but not have to remember which apps that you're actually subscribed to and be able to toggle between the two. So we believe that there's a real opportunity to simplify the discovery. We probably think of ourselves a little less of a hybrid model, and probably really we think of ourselves as a multi-product model. But we do know that we've already seen the early data on ours is that does drive retention, that does drive repeat from our customers, because we're able to kind of mutually reinforce that behavior in the ecosystem. I would say the last thing that we've done that's really interesting, as you think about bundling, I would think about, we have 39 million people in a loyalty program. And so what we're doing is building a system that people are getting rewarded when they're doing different behaviors, whether they're renting the box or renting transaction, or when they will be subscribing to third-party services through us. And then they can use those points to offset kind of costs in the future against future rentals, right, or future behaviors with us. And knowing that we have that Walmart customer, that Dollar General customer, that value-conscious consumer, we have a tremendous opportunity to really provide unique value to our customers as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the idea of the loyalty program, and again, you're kind of starting in retail where loyalty programs are extraordinarily common, but really less so in the video space to have big loyalty programs. Do you see that as something that might become more common in the future?
Potentially, right? I think we've seen great success with it as far as driving that retention and driving behavior. And we've also used it to great effect as almost a currency for, early days of really driving digital adoption, right? By incenting people, by giving them points or by giving them promo to help go try on demand or go try, our fast and AVOD services. For those that are really engaged, that are those value conscious consumers, we certainly have seen a huge benefit there. And it is a distinguishing factor for Redbox today.
Well, so one thing that Jason talked about was kind of the challenge of like single sign-on, and I was mentioning fragmentation experience. One thing I'd love to ask, and I'll go to Eric and then Deborah here, is the challenges operationally of supporting a hybrid or multi-product video service, solution, and what you see your customers, struggling with as they attempt to monetize their content and their assets as best as possible. So Eric, can you speak to some of the challenges in supporting a hybrid model?
Sure. So I think we've touched on some of it, and that is the complexity of understanding your customer, understanding where they are, what they can do, what they're willing to pay, how deeper can you engage them, how do you retain them, encourage them to do more. We've been touching on a bunch of different aspects of that, and so much of that is both in terms of data, either from their use or external data that you correlate, and being able to use that to gain some insights and then taking action on those. But I want to maybe make this a wider sort of a view of the complexity of it. And a good example is what you see commonly in the sports markets, where sports leagues teams, they look at the video service revenue as really just as one part of a revenue stream from that consumer. And the amount of revenue they expect to earn from that consumer indirectly through other mechanisms, is much higher. So that might be their sponsors, and being able to promote to the sponsors of the league that there is, the right consumer for them, and here's how they can target them, and here's the type of automobile that resonates with them, or whatever it happens to be, soda, et cetera, and all. They look at how do they get people to the venue, how do they, to an alternative, a physical product, and move them into merchandising and other things like that. They look at how do they get their consumer involved in fantasy gaming, and maybe, if it's appropriate for the jurisdiction, actual real betting. So for them, they look at it in a very complex way of how do you monetize your consumer, and so for that, it's a big challenge to see how do you move them, how do you expand them, how do you learn from one way that you're interacting with the consumer and apply it towards another way. And so there you can get an idea of the enormous complexity to be able to run a mature business for this. And I think that we're, in general, I would say, in the streaming space, just sort of entering and touching in it. And I can see beyond sports, in the larger sort of realm of content delivery, sort of more of this view of how do you have a comprehensive view of your consumer and move forward with them. I mean, I think Redbox is kind of already there to a certain extent because they came from that physical rental, because they had that transactional relationship already, they could build that loyalty program and then move them into their other products. And so they're a really advantageous starting point for them to be able to have this comprehensive view of their consumer.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't want to, I'll come back to challenges in a second, but since you really went into the kind of the merchandising side and really having all of the, we've been talking a lot about how to make more money essentially and optimize revenue models within the video service, but there's so much opportunity outside too, right? So the customers you're working with, Eric, are you seeing more interest in things like, merchandise and Sports betting is one that was mentioned earlier, right? Netflix coming out with a gaming service, which still media, very different type of media, very different market, right? What are you seeing there with your clients?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's about not thinking them as silos. It's about thinking, how do they contribute to each other? How do you, from the source, of the where the content is being created, how do you make sure that it's not just a beautiful looking stream, but it's also delivered in the expected time or the relevant timeliness for it? Does it have not just the basic sort of set of metadata? Does it have really complex, deep, rich metadata that can be used downstream for discovery purposes, but also in terms of the monetization piece? Does it have temporal metadata, or sort of understanding how things change over time and associating that with specific frames, of the video? Those are all really big, complex, and important things to get started, because you have to start with something good, and then you have to down the road find out, okay, how do I use this? How do I use this from an ad placement point of view? How do I use this from a distribution optimization point of view? How do I use this from a client sort of experience point of view, and that branded experience? Is this consumer someone who is really just consuming the event, or are they leaning forward and wanting to become involved in the event and maybe transacting within it, not necessarily buying something, but like in terms of selecting things, or selecting camera angles, or doing other things like that. All these sort of mechanisms that are there to be able to engage deeper the consumer, and so that way they feel that they're getting a better value for their money. There's an exchange, whether it's even in ads, of course, there's an exchange there. You're exchanging some of your time, and you're exchanging your essentially your identity aspect of personalization piece of it. So there's always an exchange. Sometimes it's physical money, and sometimes it's virtual. But it's how do you set up the right basis to be able to do what's appropriate for that consumer base?
I think there's a good point here that Eric is making, and the other panelists, which is the complexity of streaming compared to broadcast, TV, which was the base number of years ago, is exponential. And it's really, you have the opportunity for one-to-one customization, which just suddenly it's dizzying, the amount of data that media companies have to sift through, and they know what to do with. I think it's not only is it, it's not just like pushing content out, but it's all of these different user journeys. So it's complicated from a single revenue model when you think of all of the different territories. Jose was mentioning collections in different territories, going house to house in some cases. In a streaming world, you can handle a lot of this with really good authentication. And some interesting business models that we're seeing is we have customers who are using really creative authentication models and turning them into revenue models. So for example, there's one brand that is using an authentic, where they've made their own authentication. TVE is really big in the US, but less so in other territories. So this particular provider is authenticating its user using a standard OAuth 2 protocol, but then they can pay with their electric bill, or they can pay via insurance. Like someone else can manage collecting that money. But it all comes down to that really important authentication piece. We see different pricing in different regions. We see some brands are deciding to make their own version of TVE, again using a standard protocol, but to time with their local cable provider outside of the US, where Adobe Primetime is kind of the norm there. So it's really interesting. But then, right, that's acquiring a user, that's basic payment. As you have multiple revenue streams, and you might have different types of viewers and different states of a viewer. Is my subscription user signed in or not signed in? I mean, really just the paths start to proliferate. And that's where onboarding can become really important. And the user journey, and thinking of all of the different ways these types of viewers will enter your streaming service, and how you kind of take them on that path and hopefully convert free users to paid users, and all sorts of different things to drive your business forward, can become dizzying. So I like to say, I think a couple ways to simplify it. A really important, well, first of all, it's important to set goals. And I know that sounds basic. But very often brands do not necessarily come into this knowing what success looks like. So they don't know if they've hit a success metric. So first is just setting goals. And a really important one is time to value. Time to viewing can be part of that time to value, but they might find value just from the app working and a really seamless experience, and they're not confused, where good onboarding can come into play. It's important to have reliable metrics. It's important to even think about as you're looking at different monetization solutions. So many providers were web first, and streaming is just a different, more complicated animal. We've worked with a number of our payment partners to help them take their web first payment solution, working with their CTOs to add in the additional complexity and things they need to think about in an OTT space. So there are also then technical challenges. Now, if you need to be on multiple devices to reach, to leave no corner of your audience unturned, you need to make sure that suddenly, your tech stack works across all of these devices, because the viewer Netflix has trained everyone to expect a really seamless, easy experience. And it's now up to the rest of the industry. And there's over 3,000 apps being marketed. I read this stat recently, over 3,000 apps marketed in the US, UK, and rest of Europe. Everyone needs to hit that Netflix level of usability and seamless experience, or again, a churn is more likely.
Yeah, certainly. You have the, the big services that are setting expectations for the consumer. So even though you might not have the Netflix budget, right, your customers are watching, almost certainly, right, are watching either Netflix or Hulu or Disney Plus or Amazon Fire TV, right, Amazon Video. And so, consumer expectations are that, your application is going to work, right? You're going to be able to navigate where you need to go. So do you think that that's a pretty high bar to entry? I mean, we've got thousands of people in the game, so they're finding a way to get into the market.
I don't think it's a high bar to entry. I think really it's media brands getting started or growing the number of platforms they're on. I think need to give themselves a break, frankly, and just make sure that these basics work. I will say, as a Apple TV Plus subscriber, resume watching doesn't work consistently. Not everyone out there is perfect, and it's okay too. So just choose a few things to do and do them well, and then add to that feature set. You don't need to jump straight to sports betting. Make sure that the app loads, that you can navigate to video and it doesn't buffer too much. Because good UI is invisible and bad UI is unfortunately what people notice. So just start with the basics.
Yeah, absolutely.
Jennifer, can I jump in? Your question was to Eric, and Deborah was more focused to the complexity of the front end. But Deborah touched a little bit on the complexity on the back end as well, which is kind of like our part of the world. Imagine an OTT services provider that has one or multiple services. Those services may have one single pricing, or they may have role-based pricing or geography-based pricing. And they may have different business models, different geographies, multiple payment methods, app stores, currencies, different tax treatments, and then throw in what Deborah mentioned about maybe a way to grow your market now is through partnerships with telecommunication companies or with credit card companies or retailers or utilities. Imagine all of that trying to put together in the back end. If it is not centralized, if it's not consolidated, we see that turning out into a nightmare, which requires a lot of manual work on the finance side and on the management side to try to make sense of what's going on. And it's almost impossible to reconcile whatever data you're getting from your partners and from your app stores and come up with a single view of what the business is doing.
I'm so glad that you brought that up. We actually have a question from the audience that is somewhat related. You're really talking about the challenges and logistics of multiple pricing options and multiple markets, right? We have a question from the audience about price elasticity around for OTT services. Do you have insight from your platforms on what price different consumers will bear? As you're trying to onboard people, retain people, offer certain promotional items, and how you think about price elasticity. So, Jose, if you want to comment on that, but I also see Jason shaking his head, so he might have something to jump in on there too. So.
Well, we know that cost is probably one of the top drivers for churn. So that will itself is an indicator of how critical that is. The other factor is, in going back to something that Deborah said about Netflix having created certain expectations as to what a proper OTT service is supposed to do. You don't have the same elasticity in the US and in India and in Brazil. You also cannot assume that you're going to get the same ARPU from your subscribers, yet the quality, the content is the same. So how do you manage that? It is about knowing the market locally, doing your testing, and seeing how far you can go to really meet the customer at the right price point for the value that you're delivering.
Great. And Jason, did you have something to add to that, or was I misinterpreting a head nod?
You're misinterpreting. In many ways, we function as a retailer. We're certainly a programmer as it relates to AVOD and FAST, right?
Yep.
But as it relates to the transactional models, like the TVOD and even the SVOD as a retailer of third-party SVOD services, we're very much a retailer taking the market prices. So we're not really, we do a lot of testing around how we leverage promo and how we leverage loyalty points to provide value. But at the end of the day, that those prices that we're retailing are fixed by our content partners.
Certainly.
Yeah.
Well, let me
I'll maybe add that certainly our operator MVPD customers, they've in the past used our platform to experiment with bundling, and how do they price point those bundlings and running experiments across their established base. And then using that to be able to determine sort of pricing models for different segments or for future sort of promotional bundles.
I think I'll jump in too. I think some good advice is just to try things.
Yeah.
There's also analysis paralysis, and I know, everyone wants to do everything perfectly, but as you launch your service, plan for change. You will want to make changes. You do not know the changes you will want to make, but they are there. And if you don't have them, your marketing department will. So that's step one. And then offer multiple pricing options. There are examples out there. Hulu, I think, was an early innovator in this area, where they had, as many, you can count them on a hand, maybe more, pricing tiers and service and value offerings, value exchanges, so that users can opt in. And just be a little patient with yourselves. Try things, measure it, iterate, and optimize.
Yeah, that's great. Great advice from all of you. So we have just a few minutes here. I'm going to go to our second polling question in just a second here. So, but it's really about looking over the next couple of years and how we think things will shake out, right? Do you have perspectives, and I'll go to Eric here and then Jose, on which business models you think, are really going to rise or take the lead in the OTT space, right? Is it still going to be, SVOD's there and it's the foundation and it's the core and everything else is complementary? Or do you start to see some shifting consumer behavior as they have more options? So, Eric, why don't I start with you first?
I think there's going to be a lot of diversity out there. So a lot of it's going to be based upon the content, the brand associated with it. How do they view the purpose behind their videos service? Are they going to, is part of a larger campaign? Do they do their own advertising? How do they have sponsorships? I think the reality is going to be black. There will be always some, just like, 10 years ago, there was, the HBOs, the Showtimes out there that you would subscribe to, and then there was and then there was the ones you expected, the ABCs, CBSs, et cetera, and all. And so there will be some complexity. There will be acceptance of ad-based models in the US and in, let's say, lower ARPU areas where that already dominates. I would say there's probably less than appetite for advertising-based ones in Europe, more sort of looking for a more explicit transaction, whether it's a individual or a subscription transaction. But that's cultural and that's differences there. And so the ability to be able to adapt to, as Deborah said, experiment, give yourself the freedom to experiment and to try different things, to have different models for different places or for different, types of consumers is important.
Jose, what are your thoughts on what the primary business model will be for OTT services over the next 3 to 5 years?
I think we're going to see a little bit of everything. Again, my colleagues in the UK have this expression, different horses for different courses. So it depends on where you sit in the industry. I would say there's a couple of things. One is more agility in testing things within existing business models. And I'll put a quick example. Over the Black Friday weekend a couple of weeks ago in the US, I received offers from Clear. If you're not familiar with Clear, it's a service that allows you to move quickly through security at airports in the US. They had a promotion for a week. On Monday, they offered me a free trial for 1 month. On Tuesday, they offered me a 6-month subscription for $89. On Wednesday, they offered me buy one, gift one. On Thursday, they offered me to subscribe and have 3 family members added to the subscription for no charge. And on Friday, they offer me 3 months for $29. So testing a little bit of that, see what the customer reacts, but it requires the agility in your back end to do that. The other point that I would make is there are interesting things happening in the market. We're working with a company out in Denmark called UTV. UTV has a different business model in which they're aggregating both TV and streaming under a single subscription in a points-based model that allows you to buy different levels or different number of points per month, depending on what you want to subscribe. And based on what the content you want to access, the points accumulate. And you can change your payment every 30 days. So that's a clear example. I haven't seen that in any other part of the world. You can also say maybe Strum is out there trying a different business model that's more of an authentication and a marketplace, but things are coming up. The only other thing that I would say is keep an eye on the open banking initiative. I think as we get more processing power and higher bandwidth in things like machine learning and artificial intelligence, things are going to explode as fintech companies come into the industry with new ideas. We may have things that we cannot amongst ourselves think about at this time.
Yeah, really interesting. A lot of innovation to keep our eye on. I'm actually going to let our attendees have the last word. So the number one choice for the following, which primary business model for OTT services, will be the primary model in the next 5 years. And we did give them a hybrid option, and it was far and away the biggest choice. So 62% of our attendees today feel like hybrid is the way forward, which is interesting to think about if you're a service, a video service out there, and you are on a solo model right now. Thinking about what may be complementary to you and might be your next step outside of that core model to test, because it sounds like there's lots of opportunity for experimentation and testing in this market.
Completely agree. Wasn't it that the survivor is not the strongest, but the one that adapts the best?
Yep.
Absolutely. Well, I'd love to thank you all very much for your insights today. Appreciate all of your experience and your learnings that you've brought to our panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And next up, we are breaking out now into our networking discussion. So our team will be putting a link to the Zoom chat room into our chat box so that you can follow us over into the networking discussion. And then we're back here at 2 o'clock Central for our next session that's focused all on the age of video aggregation and the aggregation plays that are happening right now across the OTT video space. Really interesting topic. I also just wanted to mention that we do have our 2022 virtual series schedule out, and we will be having some in-person events. We're very excited. It's been a long, almost 2 years without Parks Associates in-person events, and we miss seeing you in person and your faces. So look out for more information about our in-person events, and check out our 2022 virtual series schedule for future video and our other conferences. I also just want to mention as a reminder, if you're interested in following the ins and outs of the OTT market in today's fast streaming environment, be sure to check out Parks Associates OTT Video Market Tracker, which gives monthly updates on the OTT market and the moves that are happening, as well as quarterly estimates of top services subscribers and profiles of hundreds and hundreds of video services and what they offer. We also recently published a white paper that was developed with Symphony Media AI on AI-enabled data, the key to video service optimization, which is free and available to download. If you are interested in any research, you can reach out to Jason Paris, who's our VP of Business Development at Parks Associates. And if you're interested in sponsoring any of our events or interested in custom marketing, such as white papers and webinars, you can contact Ashton Gambrell and our team. And again, we'll be back here at 2 o'clock Central to talk about the age of video aggregation. And that session is sponsored by Comcast Technology Solutions. Thank you.